today. Ooh, it took 8 seconds. Welcome back to the B2B Power Hour. It is what day of the week, Morgan?
I don't know. It's Tuesday, I think. Did you lose
I don't
track
know.
already?
Yeah, sometimes these short weeks, they just sometimes it feels like a Thursday, but it feels like a Thursday for like 3 days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do?
What do you do? I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, today we are diving deep with two arguably kings of discovery on building champions. I'm so excited.
You know, when Megan Mishak tells me that I have to meet someone because their questioning skills are absolutely through the roof, you know what's got to happen. Charles Muhlbauer, the king
Amazing.
of questions. And who else do we got, Morgan?
We got Mor Assouline from Demo to Close joining us today. Please welcome them onto the show.
No more ghosting, better questions, and champion building. Let's do it.
Golf clap.
Golf claps only. Yes. Hey guys, what's up?
I always enjoy applauding for myself.
So. Well, I mean, that's what we do on this live show all the time. It's just us, speaking into the void. So might as well.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. We have this tradition, guys, where we have something called the question of the day. And it's just something to get to know the audience. It's a little bit more fun. So maybe something on a more personal level. What would you like to know about our audience? What could be our question of the day?
And all of us will all answer this question as well. Do you have something just fun, lighthearted?
Charles, you're a king of questions.
Is a question for our audience?
Yeah. Just to get to know them. Something maybe a little. One of the biggest ones is a hot dog, a sandwich. That was
controversial.
Oh,
we're talking about like random questions.
Yeah.
No deep thought required, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask for a quick fun fact about anybody, either that or a quick highlight from the long weekend. Quick highlight.
Ooh, I like quick highlight from the long weekend. Let's do that. Drop it in chat. What's a highlight from your long weekend? As long as I think you're in the US and Canada. I don't know if Europe had Monday off.
And yes, a hot dog is a sandwich. So.
Okay. But to all you guys, while people are dropping that into chat, more, what was a highlight from your long weekend?
I had a 24-hour fever.
Oh,
that's about it.
Wow. That definitely is a highlight, though.
Yeah, I'm adding that to my resume.
I like it.
That's my resume. Wow. Was it the COVID though?
No, it was just a random fever. I have two kids, so one of them caught a cold, got me sick a little bit, and then I had a baby. Someone had a baby.
Wow, somebody had a baby. Gators
Jonah
beat
Rosenberg.
Utah.
That's a big deal, actually.
That's a big highlight. How about you, Nick? What was the highlight?
So I invested into the Hillmaster 5000, also known as Zoe, my dog. Somebody, when they sold me the dog, missed the fine print on the upgrades, and apparently on the 7000 and the 9000 model, it doesn't pull on the way down. So it got it was a quick going up and even faster going down.
Oh yeah.
She dragged me for most of it going down. It was quite a bit of gravel. What about you, Charles?
Side note, I'm watching a great documentary on Netflix right now called The Hidden Lives of Pets.
Right now, while we're doing this, you're watching it?
Multitask. Very fascinating and entertaining. Highlight for the weekend. There's a beautiful, beautiful boardwalk in Long Beach, Long Island that I went to. And that was a highlight of the weekend for me. It was a beautiful, beautiful weekend over there.
Sounds like an adrenaline rush.
You know what? It was an adrenaline rush because I had some fantastic smoothies and some Carvel ice cream. So more of like a sugar crash, but was really, really solid. So Maura, I'm sorry that it wasn't the same highlight that you had over the weekend, but
yeah, nothing can beat a 24-hour fever. I mean, that's like, as good as it gets.
Things are heating up.
That's great. I had, what did we do? Oh, we had gone to here in Denver. They'd been reconstructing our like big art museum, and they had reopened it a number of months ago, and we just had never gone. So we used yesterday as an excuse to get down there. It's great. They've got 7 floors in one of the buildings, and it was cool. It was nice to see. They did a beautiful. It was like $100 million project or something
Wow.
crazy. New welcome center, new event spaces, all sorts of crazy stuff. So that was fun.
Wow.
Plus some beer.
Plus some beer. Yep.
Do any of you watch football or no?
I'm not a football guy. No.
Yeah, I hate football.
Okay.
And so, like, I never understood how people on Sundays can just sit down and watch football. I can't do it. I get the whole like atmosphere of like barbecuing, and that's fun, but I never was into that.
Yeah,
More on Sunday watches sales videos.
Extremely true.
That's actually
Number one. It's extremely true. I work on Sundays typically, and on Mondays. Yesterday, so
That's
thought maybe
great.
you'd be on TikTok scrolling,
that too.
finding those
yeah.
new like sales tips.
I was Sunday night. I got over my fear finally, and I was interviewing video editors on Upwork.
cool.
Yeah.
Fun.
We talked to Will Allred. Will Allred found a really good team.
Yeah,
Really?
they've had some really good stuff recently.
Yeah, the
coming out
Lavender
of
Joe.
Lavender. Yeah, man. So good. Well, anyways, thanks everyone for being here. You ready to dive in, guys?
Let's do this.
Absolutely.
Obviously, if this is your first time for everyone joining us to B2B Power Hour, this is your hour as much as ours. We have some questions we want to dive into. We've got some things we want to know from these 2 amazing sellers. But also, if you got questions, drop them in chat whenever, and we'll get to the good ones at least. No, we'll get to them. So where I thought maybe we could start was how this is sort of a recurring question we ask a lot of sellers who are in the enterprise space, and I thought it would be a great place to maybe start today, which is how are you preparing for discovery? Like, what are you doing before you're actually getting on the call, and what are you setting up for yourself?
Great question to start.
And that's a punt, so whoever wants to go first.
Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, more.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that I like to do is I don't want to jump on the discovery and ask the obvious questions that I could have figured out during my research. So where are you calling from? Where are you based out of? What does your company do? Like these silly questions. That's something I could have found out on LinkedIn and visiting their website, or just looked at their email signature. Sometimes people have their address there, but so the basic stuff. So I just don't want to waste any time going into discovery. And then when I do get on the call, I want to sound like I've done my homework, and so that also comes from the preparation that I do. So instead of saying, hey, so tell me a little bit more about your business, I'll tell them what I know about their business. But that all comes from doing some level of research.
That would be a nice change from what we've experienced, hey, Morgan? So tell
Definitely.
me about yourself. What's keeping you up at night?
Oh, goodness. Anyways, Charles?
To add on what Moore just said, because I love everything Moore says.
Love you too, Charles.
Not everything offline, but definitely during these chats. The number one thing I want to have is I want to have a point of view. That's really it. So whatever I have to do to ensure that I have a point of view on why I decided to reach out to that prospect, so that I can tell that prospect, this is actually why I reached out to you. I was researching your company. I know a little bit about you guys based on what I've seen, certainly not a whole lot. My sense is that because you're doing this, you might care about that. And that's something that we do. And I thought it might be worth a conversation. So the point of view doesn't have to be groundbreaking. We just started talking, but a point of view is definitely very much appreciated on the other side.
Question for you then. When you work with your SDRs, do you teach them to look for anything when they're prospecting to start building that point of view? Like, do you give them kind of like a cheat sheet of things to look for so they actually have proof, or what does that look like?
Yeah, we've created assets for them kind of like a checklist, if you will, in order for them to make sure they do not skip their own steps when conducting research, so that they can come up with their own point of view. So we give them the ability to go ahead and do that and make sure they're doing it in a structured and thoughtful way. At the same time, not all prospects are created equal. Point of view is worth doing for some prospects. It's not worth doing for others, depending on scalability and personalization and all that. So that's how I think about it. And that's what we do here at CB Insights.
That makes sense. Juice worth the squeeze.
Yeah,
Exactly. A great quote that my girlfriend shared, who loves playing pickleball. And an elderly woman said, "The ball ain't worth the fall." So same.
It depends if you're playing professional or for fun. Like when I used to play basketball growing up, and like I used to take it very seriously, or somebody else would take it seriously, and they'd like, it's dangerous, like street ball. Like, dude, you're not in the NBA. Relax. Just
More plays to win. I respect that.
So what's interesting to me about this, and I could be wrong about this, but it seems that a lot of the chatter on LinkedIn is sort of preparing sellers to enter into discovery with like the basics, but you're confirming your assumptions, you're sort of validating some ideas that you have. But what both of you are pointing towards is that sort of entering into a discovery call with this idea, maybe this person could be a champion, maybe they're not, but you're still looking for that person, comes from all of your prep work that you're doing beforehand, from the account research, mapping out the account, finding the right people, developing a critical insight, or at least a basic point of view, and not waiting to get into the call to sort of flesh out some of those ideas. So for a seller, I'm not looking for hard numbers here, but how do you think about balancing the time for doing that upfront research and sort of getting to enough accounts, shall we say, in a given week? How do you think about balancing that out? Do you put like structures or limits on how much you're spending per account? Or I don't know. I'm sort of curious in that general direction.
Charles, you let me go first last.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Tip for tat. Yeah, so you might not like my answer. I'd say
That's enough, Charles.
You'll get yours, Mor. You'll get yours. 2 bullet points. Listen, the first thing is, right, personally, like when I coach reps, I always tell them, like, listen, I'm giving you the ingredients to enhance your probability of success. But when all is said and done, you are the chef. You have to take the ingredients I'm giving you and make your own dishes that you like to serve, if you will, that fit you, that fit your personality. And so based on that, each SDR or account executive, they have to use their own professional judgment based on the prospect that they plan on reaching out to as to how much research they feel is enough. Because in my opinion, you just have to know enough to be dangerous. Actually, I'd argue that not only do you have to just know enough to be dangerous, we admittedly will tell our prospects, listen, we're not experts in your field. That's silly. You're doing what you're doing for like 25 years. I'm in my company for 4 years and we cover a lot of different areas, and I'm not sitting in your seat, but we are experts in understanding what challenges people in your seat typically find to be a pain. So based on that professional judgment, rolling into bullet point number 2, it could be anywhere as little as 15 minutes to an hour, especially depending on how much information there is on the prospect. Sometimes organizations that you're calling on simply do not have enough information out there, or are not as active. So it's case dependent, but at the same time, you should feel comfortable saying to yourself before a call, I know I'm pretty confident in knowing enough to at least start a thoughtful conversation.
But how much time?
I gave numbers once. Numbers. I gave numbers.
At one point you said something. I was like, Charles, I don't know if I agree with that. But then you said something else. I was like, okay, I kinda agree.
More. By the way, you don't have to agree with me. You know, you can
Yeah,
disagree on it.
I think we've established that a long time ago.
You know? Yeah, and it can be anywhere as small as 15 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I agree with that. There's a couple of things that I was thinking about. One, in terms of like preparing for the discovery and the mindset of it, is try not to go in. I talk about like assuming the sale. Like once you've done the demonstration and the follow-up and the multi-threading, at one point you have to assume the sale with this mentality of like, all right, it looks like it's a fit, so let me just go in with the confidence that it's going to close. But when you're going into discovery, you actually have to unassume the sale, meaning go in not assuming that it's going to be a fit, assume why it wouldn't be a fit. And so you're going in almost to disqualify the prospect. Because as a salesperson, you get excited. Oh my God, I got a lead. Whether it's inbound or outbound, I have a lead now. How do I close it? How do I get them on a demo? And you're completely blinded by your passion for wanting to make commission. And so you're blocking out all the necessary questions that you should ask to qualify them. So going in to think about disqualifying the prospects first, that's a mindset. And then going back to Charles' point, yeah, you don't know your prospects' industry as much as they are, but I would argue that you should go in with the mindset that you are an expert within the industry. So let's just say, give me like an example of an industry that you're selling into, or something that you've heard, whether it's e-commerce, cybersecurity. Give me something, anything.
Fintech.
Sounds
okay.
great.
Fintech. All right. So fintech, the person, let's say you're selling to you're on a discovery call with a prospect. They're in fintech. They're selling. They have. Give me a little bit more like specific. Something within fintech.
Payments, automated payments.
Okay. So who does that person speak to on a daily basis? No, it's a real question.
Within their organization?
On a daily basis, yeah, whatever. Like someone that's in payments, you're a fintech company. You're speaking to a prospect that is in payment. Who are they having conversations with every single day?
Probably a finance manager.
Right, about like internal stuff that they're dealing with, payments, their company. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're a fintech company and you're a salesperson, who are you talking to every single day? Other payment companies and other CFOs. And so who knows more about what's happening in the world of fintech, call it, or payments more than you, right? Like I'll give you another example, an attorney, right? An attorney who do they talk to all day? Attorneys speak to their clients every single day. And then maybe their paralegal and their assistant, and then maybe the judge. Fine, cool. But if you're selling like a legal tech software company, legal tech product, then who are you talking to every day? You're talking to attorneys. So who's getting more insight about what attorneys are dealing with on a daily? The attorney that's only talking to their clients, or you that's talking to hundreds or maybe thousands of attorneys a year? So who's more of an expert? I put in quotations because obviously you can't take in 20 years of experience that a fintech person or CFO has and pack it into yours, but it's a mindset thing. It's like I speak to these types of folks every single day. I actually have more customer feedback or market research based on all these different CFOs or these different heads of cybersecurity or these CEOs. I have way more insight. So I actually know what you're going through. And so it's having this expert mentality, even though you're not necessarily 20 years in the business.
Yeah, I think Mor and I are saying the exact same thing, just differently. Just to be transparent there. And just on top of what Mor just said, if you're going to share something with your prospect that you're hearing from other people in their seat, not necessarily competitors, but people who do what they do, if you say something to them that doesn't make any sense to them, then they'll discredit you in 2 seconds, right? If you say something to them, because we're taught, or people share online, right, to share something with your prospect that they didn't know, or they never knew. So I like that idea, kind of like as a theory. But if you're sharing something with your prospect that completely catches them off guard, then they're probably not good at what they do, right? Instead of that, you're sharing something with them that like, hey, we know this is a problem for people in your seat, but we're finding it's actually a much bigger problem than it actually is. Does that surprise you? Like, it can't surprise them on the one hand, but on the other hand, they should sit back and recognize that they should do something about it. It can't be something that's like, oh, I never knew that. These people get paid a lot of money to do what they do. Of course, it's depending on who you're selling to. If you're selling, an enterprise deal and you're trying to have a thoughtful conversation with a senior professional, they have to trust that you know what you're talking about. And if you try to share an insight with them that's like, they don't believe that, they're like, and if they have a reaction like, that's stupid, it's not going to work. It has to be somewhat relatable. So
you're saying that you shouldn't share an insight that caused them to say, that would cause them to say, like, what are you talking about?
No. I'm saying that you should share an insight that doesn't surprise them.
I would argue that you should share an insight that does surprise them.
So we can respectfully disagree.
I love this. Yes.
No, we can totally disagree on that. I'm not fantastic with analogies.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
No. I'm not.
Right,
this is not a personal. It's not a personal argument. I'm just saying that if you're sharing it, it's like let's use the doctor-patient example. I'm a patient. I don't know nearly as much as the doctor does, and the doctor is like, "Oh, you have pain in your shoulder. That means that could be God forbid, a symptom of a heart attack." Like, oh, I didn't know that. That's something I never knew about. But if I'm now switch the roles around, if like the patient is selling to the doctor, they can't share an insight with the doctor that like blows their mind, because then the doctor's not good at his or her job. The doctor is a professional. They've been doing this for 20, 25 years. But if you share an insight like, hey, Bob, we both know that when there's pain in the shoulder, it could be indicative of a potential heart attack, right? Yeah. What we're also finding is that there are other leading indicators that could help prevent even a painful shoulder that some of which you may know about. We're finding others. Definitely love to talk to you about it. We're finding X, Y, and Z. Curious to what extent that surprises you. If their reaction is, wow, I never knew that, I would be very surprised if that was their reaction, as opposed to, I'm looking for this type of reaction. Yeah, I've thought about that before. I've seen that before. We've discussed it internally, but we haven't really done anything about it. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? That's the reaction I'm looking for. So it's not black or white. It's more gray. Yeah. I think more, to be honest, it would be depending on who you're selling to, right?
There's all these nuances, but it goes back to my point of, you speak to your types of prospects every single day, whatever that title is, and so you're actually getting a ton of insight. Like, we'll pick I don't know. Let's say you're in Gong, right? You're selling to other VPs of sales. Now, VPs of sales on a daily are really talking to their CEO, their sales managers and sales directors, maybe some of their AEs, and maybe some other executives. Fine. If you're a salesperson in Gong, you're talking to more VPs of sales than the VP of sales that you're selling to is talking to a VP of sales. So you're actually getting more insight about how other people are running their sales teams. So you can actually share insight that this VP of sales didn't think about, because they're in their own little world where you're exposed to so many different ideas.
They may not have thought about it, but it still doesn't surprise them.
Actually, building on shared knowledge. The thing I keep hearing is proof. There's proof in the pudding. You guys are building on shared knowledge, and you're connecting the dots that maybe they didn't before, and that might be shocking. But you're coming back to that shared knowledge and taking them on that journey through that conversation and your questions. I think that's kind of where a lot of sellers,
we can all agree on that.
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of sellers get mixed up, is they don't have any proof. They throw out all these ideas, or they come in with the me pitch. And because there isn't that shared knowledge, I think that's why they get shot down. They're like, why is this important? Why are you reaching out to me now? Why would I change? Like, why is this important? And I think it's what you guys highlighted is that you're answering that right off the bat of, this is why.
I think I've heard Moore speak about this in a conversation on a different podcast. I may be making this up, but I think
Making it up.
there's definitely more.
Uh,
Moore said, like, you and the prospect always have to know, why are we still talking? Period. This is why I'm still on the phone. Why are you still on the phone? Every phone call, why are we still talking? Why did you want to take this call? Why do you want to take another call? Why is it worth, bringing on other folks on the team? That why has to be there, throughout.
And I want to tie this in because we've had some good comments. That was what I was going to say, and also to the topic of today, which is that what I suspect, sort of on the surprise side, Charles, is that you have this mental model or tacit knowledge that people who are like, I've never heard that before, are probably really bad champions. And they're not going to continue moving forward the deal. They may shut down the conversation, they may be resistant, et cetera, et cetera. And I like the way that sort of you both are addressing on either side of this, what Nick was discussing, in that you're bringing insight to the table, something that's interesting to them, maybe something they haven't connected the dots yet, but it's still new, just not shockingly new. And I like what it sounds like is you're listening for a balance in the response. And so even to sort of step out of the specifics of surprise and shock and all the rest of it, when you're on a call with a prospect, what are you listening for to begin to identify whether this person could be a champion for this deal? Obviously, challenger language calls them mobilizers, but however you think about champions, like, what are the things you're listening or watching for to say, yes, this person might be able to help carry this enterprise deal across the finish line?
My turn?
Yeah, Mor, your turn.
Appreciate it. Couple of things. I'm listening to their tonality. If they sound timid or confident, it's a really important piece. Their body language. If they're answering my questions with like certainty, conviction. A lot of times you speak to somebody that is not the champion that you think is a champion, and then ends up being like the assistant of the champion, right? And then they're answering like, "Oh, it's a good question," and they give you a very broad, vague response, and then they sort of brush you off. And so if they can't answer the difficult questions or the questions that are like the pillar questions, those are some signs. Basic stuff.
Nice.
Surprise, Charles?
Is that it? I care. I want to see the reaction I'm looking for is the prospect buys into what I'm saying and follows that up with either, yeah, that's something that we've been talking about internally, or shares a story with me. Something along
That's a good
those
one.
lines. It's not, thank you. It's not limited to those two buckets, but I want a reaction like, yeah, Morgan, you make a good point. No, that's definitely not a surprise. We recognize that is a problem. In fact, we just did X, Y, and Z, and that's something that we keep realizing is being exacerbated as X, as ABC gets worse, or so on and so forth. Like, I want a buy-in. So now they're at a point, even very early on the call, where they're like, okay, listen, this person knows that this is a problem. I've already told them this is what we're talking about. Now I'm going to, as the prospect, continue now to lower my guard so that we could talk about something real. Actually, I want to just share one other thing. We're all familiar with spin selling, which, in my opinion, we don't have to get into the details of it, is a very good methodology in general for those that are listening. Situation, problem, implication, need, payoff. Okay. And I think just to touch on what Moore said earlier, which was very, very important, discovery conversations don't have to start with the S or the prospect's situation. Discovery conversations can start with the P, with the problem. You can always go back to the situation. Like, the conversations can start with an insight and a problem that we're hearing, and this is why I reached out. And now we're having a conversation about it. And then throughout that conversation, I can always be like, oh, by the way, how big is your team? Or, like, do you guys use any tool? Like, it doesn't have to be in that specific order. In fact, today, If you're starting off with insights, problems, what you're hearing from other people at the beginning of the conversation in any which way you feel is most appropriate for your prospects, then you can always go back to the situational questions. That's easy. In fact, they'll be more open to telling you.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, I 1000% agree with you. Finally,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the goal of the discovery is to find out, does the prospect have a problem? Is it a real problem? How big is that problem? Who's that problem impacting? Now, if I don't have the problem, I can't find out the timeline really. I can't find out the goals. I can't find out who's being impacted. There's no point. If there is no problem that I know of, I can't even do a demo. And so the situation will bring up the problem, but the problem would also bring up the situation. So if you're getting a lead that's coming inbound, let's assume you've built some level of rapport. One of the first questions I like to ask that I teach my students is ask them, like, what made you schedule a call with me today? That question automatically starts talking about the problem. When they start talking about the problem, they automatically just start talking about the situation that they're in. Well, we have a 3-person company, whatever it is. But when you go in with, tell me the situation you're in, they tell you what they want to accomplish. They don't really talk about the problem too much. So I always prioritize the problem. So we call it pin selling, if you like.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this topic is, most prospects, even if they know they have a problem, won't necessarily tell you what they feel their problems are because they don't want to be, sold, so to speak. So they have their guard up. And so they're not going to tell you what their problems are. And so it's part of our job to not necessarily uncover them, but to raise them on our own, which is what Mor was talking about earlier. Like, I'm not going to rely on you, Nick, Mr. Prospect, to tell me what Nicholas, to tell me what your problems are. I don't care. I'm sure we'll find out whether you feel comfortable enough to tell me what they are or what they're not. But I will tell you what I'm hearing problems are from other people, and ask if you think it's worth talking about. Because if one of them resonates, that's great. If none of them resonate, that's also fine. Maybe there's something that I didn't mention that is a problem for you that you would like to tell me about. So it's of course, not a simple math equation. It's a very artful way of raising the issues so that they can continue to, or at least start to trust you.
Yeah. Again, if you're going in with a mindset of, I don't know if this is going to be the right customer for us, then you remove this like salesy vibe to you. And you can go starting with the call with, hey, Morgan, appreciate you jumping on the call. I just want to make a disclaimer here. I don't know that we're the right fit for you. Make that disclaimer up front. And then you can transition into your questions. That will allow them to be like, all right, he's being honest. He's not trying to sell me anything. So, who does this really well? Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you follow him, Alex Hormozy on YouTube. But if you watch all of his YouTube videos, he always starts with something, but he always says this one line. He goes, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not here to sell you anything. Automatically, when he says that, I'm like, okay, I'll listen. And so you can use that approach on your discovery calls. I'm not here to try to close you or anything. I don't even know if we're a right fit. That's the whole point of this call. That's the objective of this call.
Yeah, I think in general, of course, there are exceptions to every rule. Sales professionals might be worried that the prospect is skeptical of them. And so they're always wondering, what can I do to make the prospect less skeptical, which is important. But the prospect should also understand that we are also skeptical of them. And that's why we're having a conversation. Not everybody that we speak to is a fit for what we do. And not everybody we speak to, are we a fit for them? So we're a SaaS business. We have to understand that there is mutual fit. Sometimes people want to work with us that we can't work with because they're not a fit for what we do. So that peer level of that mindset, that understanding just takes a lot of the pressure off a salesperson. Salespeople to put too much pressure on themselves to feel like they have to change minds. They don't have to do that at all. Best thing to do is for them to express like, hey, I don't know if you're a fit for us, but let's talk. And that takes a lot of the pressure off everybody. I just had a dinner the other day with someone, a CEO of a company, and we had a blast just to like network and talk and kind of get a sense of what we're doing with our what we're doing in our professional lives. And there was no agenda to the meeting. There's not like, I'm here to accomplish this, you're here to accomplish that. It was just like, let's talk and see if there's reason to talk more. And it was just a pleasure, and people will share more on both sides. So
I think you can take that level of mindset, but approach that on a sales call where you have a quota and you're like, hey, let's just see where this goes. That could be also.
There's a healthy balance. Isn't that
kind of like networking though, where what you're trying to do is find that shared narrative and seeing if like what they're telling themselves aligns with something that you can solve. Like when you go to networking, I always call it the race to commonality. So you got to hit on those common points where they get excited and lean in. I do wish that somebody would have told me when I was younger and selling that if people always agreed with everything I said as a prospect, that I'm talking to the wrong person, because that burned a lot of deals for me, talking to talkers that were excited to go and meet with me, wanted to share a bunch of information. But I think what we talked about earlier too is I always look for somebody that kind of pokes back and like tries to go and, are you sure? With however they say that in their questions. I think that's missed by a lot of junior sellers, because as soon as they get the pushback, they're like, oh shit, like, I was wrong, but not realizing that they're actually in the right spot. Now they need to dig in.
Yeah. Ironically, I would agree with
that. No pushback? What? I don't know.
It's funny. I once had this call with a prospect who, liked we had a productive discovery conversation or intro call, and he didn't want to see a demo. And I said to him something like, something along the lines of, got it. Do you not want to see a demo because the problem that you share with me is just not big enough of a problem? I was like, no, it actually is a big problem with us. I just, I don't think that it's a right fit. So I took it further and I said, got it. So it just sounds like you don't believe we can actually help you. And he said, yeah. Okay, good. That's like, I want to know what's actually happening. And then I said to him, we totally don't have to work together. Would you be open to being proven wrong? It's possible you might not be proven wrong. Maybe we can prove you wrong. Would you be open to that idea? And if you say no, then after that, we'll just stop talking. You think that's unreasonable? So like, I'm welcoming the disagreement, and I'm just asking questions to propose whether it's an unreasonable idea for us to talk based on, a reasonable request. Like, are you open to being proven wrong? You can tell me he's not open. Okay, then we'll stop. But I'm just using, I find, yes, emotion helps people move forward. But when you use a statement or ask a question that's kind of like hard to argue with, especially a professional, then that's also helpful. So that back and forth, that tension, that disagreement helps you.
I imagine you had some level of chemistry with that prospect before you asked that question.
Chemistry?
When I say chemistry, I'm not talking about like you guys like loved each other, but
I was going to say define chemistry.
No, there was some, healthy chemistry, healthy friction, call it.
We had a productive conversation. Yeah, healthy friction. We had a productive conversation. I made some points that he agreed with. He was the founder of the firm. He was skeptical throughout, which is a good sign, like you mentioned, Nicholas. And then he didn't want to talk more. And I was basically like, why? Like, what's the big deal? You could say no. Like, who cares? But at least see what we have. And
was he skeptical going in, like before the call, or when he got on?
Yeah, he was skeptical of everything.
So if he was skeptical, my thought process, if he was skeptical prior to getting on the call, and he's a CEO, a founder of a company, how long was the call for?
Half hour.
Okay, so I mean, a half hour on a CEO's calendar is a lot of time. And so if you're skeptical,
well, it was booked for a half hour. He could have left after 10 minutes.
Right, but regardless, like in his calendar, he had a 30-minute calendar block, but he was going in being all skeptical. Like, a founder or CEO doesn't book a call just so he can be proven wrong. What I'm saying is you're right what you did. I'm just sort of like adding to your point, is he went in with the mindset of I'm skeptical, but he also went in with the mindset of prove me wrong. Because otherwise he wouldn't have booked anything on the calendar. No CO wants to waste their 30 minutes of time. It's too valuable.
I like what you're both pointing to, even as it like in this broader umbrella, which is that you're unpacking, you're doing your best. This is something I think Nick and I see a lot with junior sellers who are more new, particularly in running enterprise deals, in that you're really working to try and model what the prospect is thinking. And you're never 100% right, but you're trying to get to that 80, 90%. You're unpacking. Why do they take this? Why would they take this call? Why would they be interested, especially on outbound compared to inbound? How can I connect those dots before I even get on? Because then it leads to a more productive conversation. And I feel like that's something we hear gets missed a lot, where they're like, oh, it's great. I landed this prospect. We're going to have a great conversation. And then they never spend any time thinking about what's in it for them. They're just the excited seller.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead, Mor.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll go first.
We'll talk together.
It's funny because SDRs will sometimes approach me and say, hey, Charles, what do you think about this email? And before I say anything, I'll ask them a simple question, and I'll say, if you got this email, would you respond to it? Not usually. Oh, I can't. I don't remember anybody ever saying, yeah. They always say, no, I wouldn't. So I'll say, okay, do yourself a favor, rewrite the email and send it to yourself in your inbox. Act as if like you're the prospect, open it up, read it. And if you say to yourself, wow, that's a badass email, then you have your answer.
I thought you were going to say, do yourself a favor and pack your shit and get out of here. I cold prospect. Like, I get most of my leads inbound, but I still cold prospect. One, Charles thinks I'm crazy for saying this. You've said it before, but I find it fun. It's copywriting, in my opinion, and I find copywriting really interesting. What did I want? Oh, so when you get a lead that came from some sort of outbound activity, if you've cold emailed them, and you get on the call, I think the mistakes that a lot of reps make that they're not really trained for as much as they should is they're treating that outbound lead as if that outbound lead was an inbound. So they're going in and be like, hey, so what brought you over to XYZ company today? If the prospect is polite, they'll keep their mouth shut and be like, oh, and they'll tell them the problems. But if they're pretty blunt, they'll say, well, you reach out to us.
Exactly.
So when one of my first clients that I've gotten that I closed was from an outbound email that I sent out, and we got on the call, and I realized I couldn't ask the person like, hey, well, how'd you hear about me? I can't use those questions. And so I just called out the elephant in the room. So I said, hey, I know I appreciate you jumping on the call. I know I cold emailed you. You probably get 1,000 cold emails every day. What about this email prompted you to say, hey, this is worth having a 30-minute conversation with me? So I'm calling out the cold email, and I'm using that to tie into the pain point.
That's great. I like that a lot.
I know. It's good.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you.
Amazing. So obviously we've sort of danced a little bit around this problem, which is sometimes you get on the call with the wrong person. And wrong person in a right account is sort of the scenario I'm thinking about, which is maybe they're a talker, maybe they understand the problem, but they're the wrong person. Maybe you're listening, as we've detailed before, and you go, this person is not going to be a champion for this deal. Right. So what are your favorite, I like to think of these as like moments of transition. So what are your favorite ways to transition the conversation forward to get in front of somebody else inside the company that could be the right prospect or person?
After you've already found out that this person's clearly not the person you should be talking to?
Yeah, you're already well into the first discovery call or the first intro call with them, and you're like, this person's not the right fit.
I think Charles and I spoke about this in one of our workshops that we did. I feel like it was a question that popped up, right? When we did it.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm sure we can answer it. Nonetheless.
Is the prospect aware that they're not the fit, or only you've been aware of it? Like you've just noticed it now? Basically,
you're aware. You have the mental model that says, sure, they're interested, but they're not going to be able to carry this deal across the finish line.
Let me think about that one for a second.
while Moore thinks about it, I think that I think it's very similar, very little difference to what Moore just talked about calling out his own outreach to the prospect. And in general, I'm a big fan of calling things out and with your prospect. I always encourage my reps to, we call it looking for trouble, or just calling out the elephant in the room. Okay. So, and this should be of no surprise to Moore. I'd be surprised if he disagrees with me. He might disagree with me just for the sake of disagreeing with me. But with with that said, I think just it's not really a transition. It's more like expressing to you, Morgan, if you were my prospect, what I'm gathering. So, Morgan, I appreciate what you've been sharing with me thus far. My sense is that, correct me if I'm wrong, that you may not be the best person to, or you may not be the right person to speak with about the topic that we're discussing. It sounds like there might be some other folks in the organization that would be focusing on this a bit more. That's all. So, there are different great ways to phrase it. You could say, it could be more direct. I'm very into baby steps. So that's like a baby step question before I might ask, who else do you recommend I should reach out to? So that would come before I'd ask that. But I want to at least introduce the idea. Like, it sounds like this is not the right conversation for us, but I'm guessing there might be some other people in the organization that there would be a fit for. Now you can argue, oh, you should have done your research. The other people, you can name names on the call. Maybe it's Bob, maybe it's Sarah. There are a lot of different ways to do it, but just introducing that in the conversation is something that I would do.
Yeah, if you pay attention, like, so initially when Charles was saying it, and then I was disagreeing because, not for the sake of disagreeing, just because people have egos, and if someone says you may not be the right person, it's like, what do you mean I'm not the right person? And then you role played it, and then you used your tonality, but your tonality was sort of empathetic and thoughtful, and you were almost like thinking it out loud. Your tone of voice was saying that. Then it made me be like, oh, okay, I'm not threatened by that statement. Going to your point, yeah, you should do your research. So when part of the research that you're doing before getting on the discovery call is who else, let's say your discovery call is with Morgan, who else in Morgan's department would probably somehow, like, you're essentially being proactive. Just in case Morgan is not the right person, I want to be ready when that time comes. And so the way you can transition is, one of the things I'd recommend that Charles did was you empathize and thank them for their feedback and information. So, Charles, I appreciate this level of like deep feedback and insight into what's happening in your company. And then you can do a transitionary line that I like to use, either a by the way or curious. By the way, I also noticed that earlier I was doing some research and I noticed that Nicholas was also in your company. I'm thinking, based on what you're telling me, I'm thinking that it would also make sense for Nicholas to be involved because X, Y, Z. What are your thoughts on that? So a little bit of a softer approach. I'm not telling them that they're wrong explicitly or they're not the right person. I'm just saying that this person could be a better person without saying that.
I think it's less. I think my takeaway, or a big takeaway that I've a realization that I've had over the years, is that you can really ask or say anything you want to a prospect as long as your tone is just on the money. You could ask anything you want. You can almost say anything you want, of course, being professional, obviously. But if your tone is cool, calm, collected, and non-threatening, you could really, what I say, how to ask a question can be done really well by somebody and really poorly by somebody else. So it's not just about the language; it's about how it's executed. No different than any comedian or singer or actor, actress, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a delivery.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, we've all been in sales calls where that one goes sideways. And you're like, what did you say?
Yeah. And I talk a lot about, I didn't create this idea on my own. I learned this from Question-Based Selling. It's a book written a while back. And I talk about humbling disclaimers all the time. That's the purpose of humbling disclaimers. I mean, I may not be asking this the right way. I'm not exactly sure how to ask this. Someone to told the prospect, like, I'm actually afraid to ask you this question. But but it's the delivery that matters. Like, I can say I'm afraid to ask something, but not like cower, right? But I can just tell you confidently, I'm afraid to ask you this. And it'll come across a lot better, and they'll appreciate it, and just opens everybody up.
Yeah. I love humbling disclaimers. And there's so many ways you can play with it, right? You could be like, I have a really awkward question to ask you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's just great.
It's building that connection. I like that.
Yeah.
Nick, do you have anything to ask these wonderful gentlemen? I've been just carrying some questions.
Nick, you piece of shit. I've been doing all the
work. No.
As you guys are talking, as we talk about champion building, funny enough, because I love prospecting, it keeps going back to prospecting. And I think about how many times I've started on the wrong foot because I didn't prospect enough. Like, my account research didn't go deep enough to have something worth talking about. And then I realized, as you guys are talking, I also, at that time, didn't find a problem worth solving. So I didn't find a big enough problem, or I would start talking about problems they didn't know they had. And we all know how that goes. Does not make for a great conversation. But I think this is like the big thing right now with sales being so automated and teams being separated from SDRs to AEs, is that we really have to pull this together so that it is that clean process, so that the reason I'm reaching out is the reason that I'm diving deeper in discovery. And the reason why, I'm having more meetings, like you said, somebody had said earlier, it's like a first date. Both parties need to decide if they want to have a second date, not just one way. And how true is that, right? And every time you guys talk about like the different questioning skills and building that value hypothesis, and like Nate Nasrallah, I always love how he talks about nailing that problem statement and the impact that it has on the organization. Unless that we have that idea from prospecting and continue that momentum into discovery, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why deals stall, is we lose that momentum. So people default to risk management. They're like, oh, actually, I need to pull in Paul. And actually, no, I need to get Bob. And the next thing you know, you got 17 people on the buying committee, and they just sink the ship because they're trying to throw bodies at it to try to go and end it because they just don't feel comfortable making a decision.
Yeah, I think deals stall for two reasons. One, we'll just label this as objections, things that the prospect has seen throughout the sales motions, maybe the demo, maybe the follow, whatever it is, that sort of makes me feel a little bit uneasy and unsure about your product and your solution. And then there are things where they are not objections, but conditions. A condition is something outside of your control that happens in the organization. I learned this when I was in real estate in Keller Williams, when I got into cold calling and door knocking. My mentor would tell me, he goes, you can overcome an objection. You can handle that. You can't overcome a condition. So an example of that is someone is selling their home because they are moving to, California, and they're selling their home in Miami, and they need the money from the home to buy their place in California for a new job. Okay, that's a pretty motivated reason. Great. Prospect is more likely to buy if you can solve their problem in a very fast way. All of a sudden, that prospect finds out that they lost a job and they're not moving to California. There is nothing you can do to get them to sell the house or to work with you. Nothing. That is a condition you can't overcome. So I think it's important that when sellers are trying to push the deal forward, they can't just think of, oh, what objection does the prospect have about our product? They also have to think about what's happening internally. If the company had like mass layoffs, then a couple of things happen. The people that are still employed are probably taking over the job of somebody else that was laid off. So they have less time to focus on what used to be a priority, which is your solution. And now they're more about, let's not let the ship sink. And so now they're focused on other jobs. And so I think it's a VPs of sales and sales managers and founders and CEOs' fault for putting this ridiculous pressure on sales reps for like, you got to close the deal no matter what. They said that this was the time. Yeah, but shit happens. Like, life happens. You know what I mean? You know how many times I was 2 seconds from purchasing something, I was like knee deep in like doing the research. I was like, all right, I'm making a decision. I slept on it, and then like the next day something else happened in my business. I was like, all right, this is no longer a priority. Let me shift focus. Like that happens every second in a company. I worked as VP of sales in the startups. I know what it's like. And then it sort of dies down, and then over time it builds over time, and then shit happens again, and the CEO is like, why didn't we fix this a long time? Okay, get on the call, and then they're back to being motivated again. And so I think being mindful of the prospects like buying environment more than your selling environment.
Yeah, as Mor is talking about that, it's like, in general, you have to have three things in order to even think about having a closed deal, right? The prospect has to have, obviously, admit to a problem. The prospect believes that the problem is big enough that they actually want to solve for it. That's number two. And that the third item is that what's that?
Why you?
No, they have a problem. They've decided they want to solve for it, and they believe that I guess you could say, argue it's interrelated to the second one. The impact is actually big enough for them to react, right? Because it could be a problem, but the problem's not big enough, and so on and so forth. But to Mor's point, the problem is based on a condition. Problems are based on conditions. And getting to like what is the root of the problem? Why is that a problem? That's pretty much getting to the condition. This is the condition that we're in right now, and that condition might change, and then it's not a problem anymore, or not a priority. So that's just what was rolling through my my mind.
That's spot on.
I also want to. I know we're close to the end, but Mor, you
should have had points, by the way. Like we should have, because Mor and I are very competitive. Like,
ding, ding, ding.
-1 for Mor, and like we should have created.
Yeah, but we're showing each other some love right now.
Yeah.
Can we get
I'm forcing myself to agree with you.
So, right now, actually, Saif had just dropped this in chat. Obviously, budgets are shifting, and this is true across entire SaaS ecosystems, it seems, right now. So when you think about conditions and objections, and also navigating the sale, particularly for deals, not new deals, but existing deals, qualified deals in pipeline, how much do you believe budgetary conditions inside of a company are the conditions that you can't overcome, or simply relate back to not identifying a strong enough pain and not getting that over the finish line? And I know there's probably context here in the company, but I just punt.
It's a hard one to answer.
I'm not running my own business like Mor is. I'm an employee, so I see how we think about buying things. And we just had a demo with somebody, and I ran it by somebody on my team, and she's like, they do good stuff, it's not a priority for us. She said we also don't have budget, but don't have budget means we just is not a priority. That's all it means. If it's not a priority, it could be based on what Mor said. It could be based on a condition. Okay.
I think the term budget is also like loosely thrown around. Like, I don't think, like, depends how early the prospect is going into like the stages of research. But if they're going really early, they probably didn't sit down in a spreadsheet and like, all right, let's look at our financials and let's see if we have a budget. They probably didn't do that. So you ask them, do you have a budget? Like, no, not really. It's like, oh, not qualified. Not really. Yeah. Maybe it's just too early.
Asking if they have a budget is, I mean, I wouldn't ask that. It wouldn't be one of my first questions.
It would definitely not be one of my first questions.
It's just not. I don't care. I really don't care. I don't care. Yeah, and then if they believe they have a problem, they believe that their problem is big enough to solve, and they believe that we believe, like a lot of people, like if you're a salesperson, the prospect, they have this problem, but the prospect doesn't believe that you can help them, right? It has to be. It's a lot of things, a lot of loops that you have to jump through, so to speak.
Or like you said, either they don't believe in that you can help them, or they don't believe that their condition is that bad.
Yeah. All these things have to be figured out way before they believe we can help you. A lot of salespeople Flip it. Oh, we can help you.
I hate that.
Who cares? Don't care.
And they say that during discovery also.
Yeah.
It's like, so what are you looking for? We're looking to increase our sales. Well, we're the perfect company for you. It's like, it's premature ejaculation. Like, I don't know.
That's one way to tackle it. Yeah.
It is what it is. They're like, it's too
Yeah.
soon. So
You couldn't give a different example more.
I don't know why that just popped into my head.
All right, that's a first.
It's a first for the B2B Power Hour. I'm into it. That's great.
But it's true though. It's like slow down. But I'll give you a personal story. I'm working with a particular lead right now. It's a big account. My accounts are really much like I've sold in SMB as a VP of sales and had a team. But as a founder for my company, I have an SMB side, which is my university, and then I have my enterprise side, which is my services, which is pretty much enterprise dollars in terms of revenue. So I'm talking to a company, and I happen to know two of the founders, and now I know the other founder. Long story short, we're negotiating, and one of the questions I asked him, like, why are you even looking into something like sales training, whatever it is? Long story short, he doesn't have time. They can't scale. They're about to hire 2 more people. Blah, 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 blah. And so the CEO is the type of personality where he's very like, let's do it, and then like tomorrow he can cool off, right? And so he's the CEO and he like runs the show, so to speak. Not runs the show, but he definitely, has a say in everything. And so if he says it's hot, then everybody thinks it's hot, and then they're ready to buy. Long story short, my long story shorts keep getting longer. Yeah. He wanted to implement his pain point was pretty big. I don't have enough time to train my team. We're about to hire 4 more people. We're about to raise money, all these things. And I was like, okay, so when are you looking to implement something? Training, whatever. He goes ASAP, yesterday. Like this high level of like, all right, so if after today we speak and you see that this is going to work out, would you be ready to sign up by the end of the week? Yes. I'll sign up by the end of the week. Okay, cool. So high motivation. And then we went over the pricing, sent a proposal. We went back and forth. Long story short, it started getting a little colder. It's still warm. We're still in conversation. It got a little colder. And then he's like, you know what? Let's look at this in September. This conversation was happening in July. So I spoke back to him. I'm like, I'm a little confused. You originally said that the reason why you're looking for something like this is because big ass pain point. So I'll bring up specifically the pain point that he was having, the impact of that pain point. So you said that you don't have time to coach your sales team and you're about to hire 4 more people. And because of that, like it's going to be like do or die essentially for the company, for the sales department. And you wanted to do this yesterday, but now you're pushing this off to September. What's changed in the timeline that this is no longer a priority? And you can ask this direct question. He called me up and he just had an open conversation about what was happening. And
by the way, that has a lot to do with what you mentioned earlier, your rapport with the prospect.
Yes.
You can't just ask that.
You can't just ask that.
You have to be driving in order to just ask that question directly. So
yeah, there's 2 types of driving. Driving, either we respect each other and so we'll talk about it, or driving like we're best friends. There are 2 types of conversations you can have with the prospect. But essentially, I found out that the condition, it was all about a condition. The condition was everything was riding on them closing a round of funding, because otherwise, if they didn't and it was delayed, he would have to come out of pocket and pay for the service, and he wasn't comfortable doing that. So he was willing to deal with the problem until. So that's insight that I ended up finding out because we built enough rapport. I know the other founders. But if you can get to a level like that where you can, it's multi-threading, right? I've connected the founder, the CEO, the CTO, blah, 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 blah. So that's just a story that's interesting to find. Like
what comes to mind for me in that? Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was going to end it with just things.
I was going to say it. Salespeople should care more about respecting one another, meaning prospect respects you, than being liked. I feel like a lot of sales professionals operate on the need for approval, and that could actually destroy their sales cycle.
Being a yes person?
Yeah.
Being so excitable and charismatic and, you should just...
Yeah. They want to respect you and trust you. Don't have to be liked. They don't have to think you're an a-hole, but, you just have to say you're pleasant. You're someone I respect, and I trust what you're saying. Let's move forward.
So somehow we're at the end of this hour. This has been hilariously fun and insightful, but out of respect for our audience's time, we usually try and end close to the end of the hour, hence the name of the show. But so Charles Mor, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you very, very much.
Where can people find you? Where should they connect with you out on LinkedIn? Where else? What else should they do?
This is a punt?
Yep.
Go ahead,
they
Mor.
can connect. Yeah. They can connect me on LinkedIn, or if they're interested in sales training or sales coaching, check out demotoclose.com.
Sweet.
Also, check out Mor's TikTok. It's fun too.
Yeah, she has a very fun TikTok.
You follow me?
You do? So yeah, people can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. I also do one-on-one coaching for discovery only.
Competition.
This is why we brought you both on. Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks, guys. And Nick, do you want to close this out as per usual?
I don't know why, but I feel like I got to turn this into a poll just to play to your guys' competitive side. Would you rather hire Charles or Mor?
Because AE's asking me, how are you different than Mor? I say, I'm not different, I'm better. They're like, oh.
and AE's asked me, how are you different than Charles? I'm like, who's Charles?
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so good.
Wow. We could stop here. We can go on for hours. But...
Nick, do you want to close this out?
Guys, it's 2022. Nobody should suffer in silence. If you need help, if you're struggling with sales, if the world is overwhelming, reach out to any of us. Get in the comments, shoot us a DM. You don't need to buy anything. It is no longer acceptable for sellers to suffer in silence. So if you need help, reach out. We'd be happy to help you. And thank you so much for tuning in. And I think it's fair to say this poll's got to go live.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Take care, guys.
Love you, Charles.